So back in 2016, I completed my MBA from the University of Toronto. At that time, when I applied to universities, I got free admits, but I had no counselor to help me. And so, needless to say, the process was extremely painful. I had no idea about what factors to consider, what decisions to make, and in what sequence to make those decisions. But now, with the benefit of hindsight, with experience of counseling thousands of students for the last 5 years and helping them get into top ranked universities across the world, I know exactly what decisions you need to make if you're planning your study abroad journey for 2026. So my goal with this video is to help you plan your entire study abroad journey step by step. I'm going to cover everything that you need to know, and in fact, if you watch this video to the end, you'll also get some tips about scholarships, and you won't even need to go with a study abroad counselor to plan your entire journey. So this is how I would plan my study abroad journey in 2026 with a lot more planning and a lot less pain. Let's go. Before anything else, the first thing you need to decide is, why do you want to study abroad? Do you want to go abroad for high salaries? Do you want to go abroad to immigrate? Do you want to go abroad for a career switch, or do you just want to go abroad to make new friends or develop your professional network? Getting clarity on why you want to study abroad is the first and the most important thing that you need to do when planning your study abroad journey, because this decides which programs, countries, and even what your budget should be for studying abroad. So let's take an example. Say you want to really earn a lot of money abroad, then probably the best choice for you is the United States. But let's say your goal is immigration. Well, in that case, you might be better suited to go to countries such as Germany or Australia. Having a clear understanding of why you want to study abroad will help you make the right decisions later and will minimize regret when it comes to making wrong decisions. So the second thing that you need to decide when it comes to your study abroad journey is, what is your budget? Even if you're planning to go to a European Union country such as Germany, where public universities are almost free, your living expenses will be 10 to 15 lakhs per year. So you need to have complete understanding on what your budget is. Have an honest conversation with your sponsor as to what your annual budget is and what is the total amount that you can spend when it comes to your study abroad journey. You should also discuss with your sponsor whether you're willing to take a loan and whether they might be willing to sponsor your loan. Knowing your budget can help you narrow down your options when it comes to studying abroad. So let's take an example to understand this. Say you have a budget of 60 lakh rupees and you want to study management in any country. Now, obviously, with a budget of 60 lakh rupees, you're not going to get into the top ranked universities in the United States, because most of them will cost you upwards of 80 lakh rupees. Or what you can do is consider MBA programs in countries like Germany, where the cost is around 45 to 50 lakhs. Or you could take a look at MIM programs across Europe or the rest of the world. Most of these programs also cost anywhere between 30 to 50 lakh rupees. Now, the third step in your study abroad journey, after you define why you want to study abroad and what your budget is to decide what program you want to study. Keep in mind that whether you're flying abroad for your undergrad or your postgrad, chances are that you're flying abroad for your final degree. And so the knowledge that you get, the skills that you develop in the program that you study abroad will most likely dictate what sort of jobs you get and what career you have for the next 30 years of your life. So you want to think about this carefully. Now, if you've been watching this video carefully, you know by now that the first thing to define is why you want to study abroad. Part of that is deciding what your long-term career goal is, what sort of industries you want to work in, what sort of jobs you want to work in. Understanding that can help you define which programs to apply to. So let's understand this with an example. Say you want to become a product manager at a tech company like, let's say, a Netflix or a Google. Well, then there's no point actually studying a master's in computer science, because that program doesn't develop the skills or knowledge that you need to succeed as a product manager. Instead, you need to take a look at programs such as a master's in engineering management, a master's in technology management, or even a master's in information systems, because the curriculum of these programs can be tailored to help you become an amazing product manager. Now, once you've identified which program you want to study, then you need to decide which countries to apply to. The major factor that you need to consider when deciding which countries to apply to is the kind of job opportunities that you get in that country, both in terms of the salaries as well as in terms of how easy it is for you to get to a job. Keep in mind that not all countries are created equal for every program, and so this decision needs to be made very, very carefully. If you end up going to a country which doesn't have great job opportunities for your field, you will end up being frustrated towards the end of your career, because you'll never get a job that fully utilizes your potential. So let's say, for example, you want to study something like artificial intelligence. Then the natural choice becomes the United States, because that's the country where you have the most research and development as well as the most number of jobs for AI. Or if you don't have the budget to study in the United States, you could take a look at something like Ireland. Or let's say if you want to get into core engineering, then maybe you could look at countries such as Germany, Japan, and South Korea. So this is how you decide which is the country you need to study in 2026. Now, one major mistake that I see students making is obsessing over one country. Don't do that, not in 2026. Majority of the popular destinations in the Western world are tightening their immigration policies, and so you cannot obsess over any one of those countries. At the same time, you have many countries in Asia or even in Europe that are aggressively promoting themselves through various immigration pathways and which have great job opportunities. So this is what I would do if I were you and planning my studies abroad in 2026. I would identify 3 countries to apply to, and I would apply to 4 universities from each of those 3 countries. Now, within those 3 countries, I would identify 1 or 2 countries that are established and 1 country that is up and coming. So again, let's understand this with an example. Say I want to study a master's in electronics. Then obviously my first choice becomes Germany. Why Germany? Because most of the public universities are free to study at, and Germany has a large industrial base which I can utilize to get a great job after graduation. I would then also take a look at the United States. Why? Because you have a recent surge in the semiconductor industry in the United States as well as in the robotics industry, and salaries in the United States, frankly speaking, are much higher than what I can get in Germany. But here's the deal. Germany has become very competitive in the last 2 years because you have too many Indian students applying to German universities, which means that my chances of getting into a top-ranked university in Germany in 2026 is lower than what it was before. So therefore, I need to diversify my risk. And when it comes to the United States, we all know about the changing geopolitical climate and the changing visa immigration policies. So I can't even rely upon United States. So therefore, the third country that I would take a look at if I were applying for a master's in electronics would be South Korea. Why South Korea? There are a bunch of reasons. But first and foremost, you have several universities such as Seoul National University, Korea University, and Yonsei University that are ranked in the top 100 universities of the world. So the quality of education is amazing. The second reason is that you have many companies in South Korea such as LG and Samsung that recruit literally thousands of students for electronics engineering related jobs from universities in Korea. And then the third reason I would look at South Korea is because of the cost of education. Whereas in Western countries, you end up spending 25 to 30 lakhs per year on average at a top-ranked university, except for a few exceptions like Germany. In South Korea, most universities, even the high-ranked ones, will cost you only 7 to 10 lakh rupees per year. And the final icing on the cake when it comes to South Korea is the fact that South Korea has a major population issue. Their workforce is going to decline by around 20 to 30% in the next 15 years. So the country is opening up and is welcoming to immigrants. Now, once I've identified these 3 countries and once I decide to apply to 4 universities in each of these 3 countries, I will basically be diversifying my risk, and tomorrow if anything changes in these 3 countries, I always have the other 2 countries as backup. So this way I get to diversify my risk and I can delay the final decision to the end depending upon which university I get an admit from, what scholarships I get, and the geopolitical situation at that time. So once you've identified which countries to apply to, then you need to identify which universities to apply to within that country, because let's be honest, you can't apply to all universities in a country. You don't have the budget and you don't have the time. Now, the major mistake that students make when deciding which universities to apply to is to get obsessed with rankings. And I can understand why. In India, generally what happens is that top ranked universities attract the best companies when it comes for placements. And the reason is simple. You have a concept of campus placements. So therefore, if companies need to choose which campus to go to, they don't have infinite time and energy. Therefore, they're going to select the top ranked universities. But this is not how placements work abroad. In fact, abroad, you don't even have the concept of campus placements. The kind of job that you get purely depends upon your knowledge, your skills, and how you network with the right people. If you take a look at the rankings, only 5 to 10% of the weightage is actually towards placement. Most of the weightage is towards research. So if you're only going by rankings, you might miss out on some universities that are relatively low ranked, but which have great placements. So for all these reasons, do not focus only on rankings. Now, does that mean you should not apply to a few high-ranked universities? Absolutely not. Going to a few high-ranked universities or applying to them does have certain advantages. If you get in, you get to study with smart peers. You also might get more research funding for whatever research projects you want to do, or some startup seed funding for any sort of business idea that you have. But remember that all these things only give you a platform. They do not dictate your long-term success. So therefore, you need to take a much more holistic view of applying to universities abroad. And keep one thing in mind. If you do end up applying to top-ranked universities, you need to know the risks associated with them. The first risk is that your chances of getting an admit severely reduce. Any top-ranked university anywhere in the world, if it's ranked in the top 100, will have a selection rate of only 5 to 15%. So be ready for a lot of rejects. The second thing is that generally top ranked universities are more expensive than lower ranked universities. So if you do get in, then you're anyway going to end up spending more amount of money. So it does depend on your budget as well. Anyway, considering the different factors to apply to universities, there are many that we can discuss, but honestly only three matter. The first is the academics and your curriculum. Again, the program that you go to is most likely going to be your final program, and therefore you need to develop the knowledge and the skills required to get the kinds of jobs that you want. Now, two universities can have roughly the same ranking, but it can be very different when it comes to academics and curriculum. So let's understand this with an example. MIT and Carnegie Mellon are typically ranked number 1 and number 2 when it comes to computer science. So they roughly have the same amount of prestige or reputation attached to their brands, but they could not be more different from one another. While MIT focuses on research, Carnegie Mellon focuses on developing great software engineers. So depending upon what your career goal is, you might choose one, either MIT or two, Carnegie Mellon. The kind of subjects that you study and the way you're evaluated and even the kind of companies that you might get offers from can be significantly different for MIT and for Carnegie Mellon. So this is the first thing that you need to look at. The second thing that you need to look at are your placements. Now when it comes to placements, there are multiple things that you need to look at. The first thing that you need to look at is the strength of the career services team. In India, you have campus placements. Abroad, you do not have campus placements, but you do have a career services team. This career services team does not have the responsibility of getting you a job, but they do have the responsibility of connecting you to the right companies by career fairs or industry events. And they also have the responsibility of helping you develop your profile so that you develop the right skills to get the dream job that you want. Do not make the mistake of assuming that top-ranked universities have better career services. In fact, in many cases, top-ranked universities do not have great career services departments because their focus is on research, not on career development. On the other hand, you might have mid to low-ranked universities that really focus on their career services team because they know that that's the only way that they can attract good students. And here I want to give an example of one of our own students. Last year, we had a talented kid, got into some top-ranked universities, but decided to go to UT El Paso for affordability reasons. Now, with all due respect to UT El Paso, though it's a decent program, it's not as high ranked or reputed as the other admits he got. But because of that, he was kind of the best student in that university. He was able to outshine all of his peers, and the career services team took special effort to get him an internship, and today he's interning with NASA. Now, he probably would not have gotten this sort of an opportunity had he gone to one of the higher ranked universities. So do your research and try to find out which university has great career services teams. The other thing when it comes to placements is to look at co-op or work placement programs. Many universities abroad have co-op and work placement programs, which simply means that you replace a few courses with a long-term internship at one of their company partners. And there are a few advantages to this. The first advantage is that you get paid as a full-time employee as a part of the co-op. So you're literally earning while you're studying. The second advantage is that you develop the skills that you need to get your full and final job offer. In fact, in many cases, this co-op or internship itself converts to your full-time job. And again, it is not necessarily the high-ranked universities that have strong co-ops. Many of the mid-tier universities such as Northeastern University and RIT actually have stronger co-op placements, which is why you see that these universities charge a tuition fee which is almost equivalent to the top-ranked universities, because they know that if anyone enrolls with them, the kid is going to get a job at the end of their 2-year master's program or at the end of their 4-year undergraduate program. The third thing that you need to look for when it comes to placements is the size and strength of the alumni network. It's 2025. Every good LinkedIn job offer receives hundreds of applications. And so if you're being completely honest, HR managers aren't really going to go through your application if you're just applying through LinkedIn. So what does work for you to get a job is getting referrals into the dream companies that you want to work at. Now, a random person is not going to give you a referral, but an alumnus from your university might do that. So before you decide whether to apply to a university or not, do check out on LinkedIn the size and strength of the alumni network in the kind of roles, companies, as well as industries that you plan to work in. And if you aren't able to find any good information about this on LinkedIn or other job portals, feel free to email your university and request them for a career placement report for your seniors or for the students who have gone to that university in the past years. Now, we covered academics and curriculum, we covered placements. The third thing that you need to look at when it comes to shortlisting universities is the cost of education. Because remember, the second thing that you're deciding in your study abroad journey is your budget, and you do not want to go over and above your budget. Now, When it comes to your budget or the costing of universities, typically public universities tend to be more affordable than private universities because the tuition fee is subsidized by the state or the central government. But then this also depends upon the ranking of the universities. Higher ranked universities will typically cost you more than lower ranked universities, but there are always exceptions. So there are many high ranked universities, especially in countries like United States, that offer merit based as well as need based financial aid even to international students. And if you don't do your research carefully, you might reject these universities or not apply to them just because you think that they're expensive. So let's take this again with an example. Say you're considering Harvard. Now, Harvard is one of the most expensive universities you can apply to. But did you know that they offer financial aid to international students such that if your family income is lesser than $100,000 a year, then, and if you get in, they will completely pay not only your tuition fee, but even your living expenses to study at Harvard. How cool is that, right? So you need to do your research and you need to identify which universities to apply to based on these three factors. Again, academics and curriculum, placements, and cost. Now, typically when students go through these three major factors, they're going to come down to a shortlist of around 20 universities. But again, that is too many. According to me, you should apply to 10, maximum 12 universities. So if you want to further shorten this list of universities to apply to, the next thing you need to do is you need to benchmark the selectivity of the university or how difficult it is to get into that university with your profile strength. Because the more selected the university or the higher rank the university, the more difficult it is going to be for you to get into that university. So you need to do a realistic assessment of your profile strength and identify which universities you can get into. And out of the 10 universities you apply to, my recommendation would be to apply to 3 universities in the dream category, 4 universities in the target category, and then another 3 universities in the safe category. So what do I mean by dream, target, and safe? A dream university is one where your chances of getting an admit are lesser than 30%. A target university is one where your chances of getting in are between 30 to 70%. And a safe university is one where your chances of getting in are higher than 70% and where you have a good chance of getting a scholarship. Now, can you apply only to dream category universities? Absolutely you can, but according to me that's foolish because like I said, dream category universities will have a selection rate of between 5 to 15%, and so if you apply only to them, you need to be ready to get a lot of rejections. At the same time, can you apply only to safe universities? You absolutely can, but that too in my opinion is foolish because you're not giving yourself a fair chance of applying to higher ranked universities and you might regret this decision later. Now, the major problem that students face when doing this entire shortlisting or benchmarking their profile strength to the university selectivity is they do not know how to evaluate their chances of getting at a particular university. And we at Admit Abroad have perfected this. We have created a tool in Excel which tracks more than 20 parameters of a student's profile. Based on that, we assign a profile strength to student, and depending upon that, we are able to fairly evaluate the student's chances at different universities that he or she might be applying to. If you want to know more about this tool or if you want access to this tool, I'll be sharing a number on the screen right now. You'll be able to see this number. Just WhatsApp or call this number and we'll make that tool available to you, or we'll evaluate your profile for you. Now, once you're done selecting which 10 or 12 universities to apply to, then you can actually begin the process of applying to universities. When you're applying to universities, there are several documents that you're going to have to prepare. So statement of purpose, letters of recommendation, resume, transcripts, and many other documents. And honestly, I can't get into the details of this in the interest of time. This deserves its own video, which I will do later. But for the purposes of this video, I have a couple of tips that I do want to share when it comes to applying to universities. The first and probably the most important tip is to check the requirements of the university for each and every document very, very carefully. So let's take an example. Let's say your university requires you to submit transcripts while applying. Then you need to go into the details and identify what sort of transcripts they require. Do they require transcripts which are just signed and stamped by your university, or do they require WES evaluated transcripts? And if they do require WES evaluated transcripts, are those WES evaluated transcripts required while you're applying, or can they be submitted to the university after you get your provisional admit? Knowing these things is extremely important because if you don't go through the details and submit documents according to the specifications of the university, you might get disqualified even though you have a good profile. So this is the first tip. The second tip when it comes to applying to universities is to start early. Remember how I said that you have different documents such as your statement of purpose or resume. Depending upon the university you're applying to, you might have to customize these documents, and so this takes time. My opinion is that students should start preparing the documents at least 3 to 4 months before the application deadline, because that will give you enough time to think about what you want to include in your documents, what you do not want to include, and it'll also give you enough time to customize your documents. This way, you can also minimize the stress levels associated with applying to universities, because remember, while you're applying to universities, life doesn't stop. You're going to be working, or you're going to be in high school or in college, and balancing those things as well. So that's my second tip. And then the third and final tip when it comes to applying to universities would be to apply as soon as you can. Remember that at the start of the application season, universities are desperate to get students. 100% of their seats are empty, and so is 100% of the scholarship budget intact. So it's easier for them to give you both an admit as well as a scholarship much before the application deadlines. If you wait till the end to apply, then you are going to be competing with multiple students for a few seats and some less amount of scholarship that is remaining with the university. So you need to apply as soon as you can. So those are my 3 tips when it comes to applying to universities. Now, speaking of applying to universities early, it has another advantage, which is that you can maximize your chances of getting a scholarship. Not just the scholarship from the university, but from third-party trusts. Remember that if you're applying abroad, there are many trusts in India and abroad that are willing to offer you scholarships. But in most cases, the eligibility criteria is you need to already have an admit. So now if you apply to universities at the last moment, you're going to get your admit late. If you get your admit late, you might miss out on the deadlines of these different scholarships. And if you're thinking about which scholarships to apply to, then let me tell you that every country has its own website which lists the different scholarships that you can apply to. So for example, if you're applying to the UK, you can go to the British Council website and check out the scholarships for British universities. If you're going to, let's say, Australia, then you can go to the studyinaustralia.gov website. Or if you're going to Germany, then you can go to the DART website. So if you have a particular country in mind and you don't know which scholarships to apply to or which websites to check out, do let us know which country you're planning for in the comments below, and we'll get back to you with the different links as well as scholarships that you can check out. Okay, so that's how you plan your study abroad applications for the 2026 intake. I hope you liked this video and I hope it added some value. If it did add some value to you, do like, share and subscribe. That tells the YouTube algorithm to distribute this video to more students and they can then benefit from this. I'll see you in the next one.